Welcome to the Grapevine, the best in edutainment, education, meeting, entertainment. We are going to entertain you. We're going to educate you. We want you to hear what we're talking about. Give us some feedback. Give us some topics. Let us know if we're on the point, if we're totally off in left field. Let us know. You can get us on Facebook at the Grapevine Clarksville. You can get us on YouTube at the Grapevine Clarksville as well. There's plenty of ways to feedback. Let us know what's going on. Let us know if you believe us. Give us some topics. We're looking for the Harvest, the Grapevine House Band, a couple of guitars, horns, maybe a keyboard. If you think you got some skills and you want to come and hang out with us, get yourself known as a little band, we were looking for the Harvest. And if you notice, today we're down one. We usually have four up here. We're down our co-host, Martius Kendrick. He's battling a little bit of illness, so Martius, get better. This one's for you, bruh. So we want you to be there with us next time, but that's not going to stop the show. That's not going to stop the flow, because they still need to be educated and entertained, and we're going to bring it to them. It's a little bit more of a somber situation, somber occasion and topic today, because there's been a bunch of ignorance going on, and you might have an idea of where I'm going, but it's ignorance in a bunch of different ways, and it's violent ignorance that's causing damage, not just in America, but worldwide, and a lot of it's unnecessary. So I felt it was important to talk about unnecessary violence. Why is there unnecessary violence? I know why there's some violence. Why are wars fought? Because wars have to be fought. I understand that. Somebody breaks into your house, you're going to do what you need to do to defend your house, defend your domicile, defend your family. Correct. But do people need to go into public places and shoot up the place, killing a ton of people? Do people need to ingest chemicals, cause them to get out of their mind and turn into so-called cannibals? Was it necessary for people in the 50s to be swinging from trees as much as they were? Ooh. Was it necessary in the 1600s for people to be considered a witch and burned at the stake, or drowned in a tub of water just because of the word of a couple of teenagers? Throughout history, there's been unnecessary violence. What's the reason? Is there a reason? Is there something we can do? What can we do to squash unnecessary violence?
Well, first of all, there are various reasons behind why violence take place. You know, in most cases, more especially like the case, like say the children that got killed up in Connecticut, it's hard to depict the specifics as to why it happened. Why? Because they do these horrific acts and then they turn on themselves. So there's no means of finding out the true meaning or the true reason behind why it happened, because the one who executed these actions are nowhere to be, you can't question
held responsible.
Right,
you can't,
right. So
you can't ask them a question because they're no longer with us.
Why did you do it? Because they take their own lives. And then you have others that do these horrific things, go out, shoot people, stab folks. Because I think overseas as well, in China, there were ones that...
Same day as the tragedy in Connecticut.
When they stabbed 20-something children over there. I mean, why do they do that? Brother, I'm going to tell you what. I just believe that somewhere the glue came away from the fabric. So that's my belief. I think somewhere they lost a key factor in the quality of life that they should have been experiencing. And because they wasn't really experiencing the good side of life, they wanted everybody else to suffer with them. That's just my belief.
Don't you think tougher gun laws could have helped deter this? There are a bunch of people out there that believe that if there were tougher measures when it comes to guns in this country, then certain people wouldn't be allowed to get them and things wouldn't happen. Is it the gun control?
Well, I wouldn't say. I mean, because I could get a gun, and by the time I go to the mall and shoot up everybody and then turn on myself, I mean, it was all in vain. I mean, because I still committed the crime, and there's nothing you could do to me.
Right.
Even if there was.
The
Exactly.
law's still in effect.
Yeah.
Yep.
You know, and a lot of these things happen so spontaneous that you don't have time to react anyway. Let's say the gun law is in effect and you have the scanners and everything in the places in which these maniacs go into, and the bells and whistles go off saying, hey, this person has a gun. Now, how long is the reaction time
That's a good
for
point.
the police or whomever? How long will it take for them to get?
Will they be able to use that weapon?
Will who be able to?
Will the person that goes in there after all the bells and whistles go off, will they be able to get a couple of rounds off before they get tackled?
Oh, come
Oh
on.
yeah.
Now.
Oh
Think
yeah.
about it.
Oh
Come
yes.
on now.
Yes.
So gun laws themselves might not be the solution.
Not for that, but it would be for if someone were to invade your house, your property in the middle of the night or in the middle of the day, or whatever, and you have your weapon available. That's when,
Weapon doesn't have to be a gun in that case. If I can get
Right.
somebody with a bat,
yeah.
then you
That's the
aren't-
weapon then.
Exactly.
Exactly.
Exactly. So a gun law wouldn't control that. So, okay, about a month ago in Minnesota, there was a cousin and two cousins, male and female, teenagers, trying to break into this guy's house. He was in the basement tooling around. He heard the glass break. He saw the first person coming down the stairs. He's ex-security officer, 64 years old, in his house. His house has been broken in to before. He went to his back, waited till he came down the steps, pop, got the person in the waist. Person fell down the stairs. He pop, 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 pop.
You kept shooting them?
Making sure they were no longer able to break into his house.
Now, this was both of them?
Well, this was the first one. And then he went and dragged, turned out to be a 17-year-old boy. He dragged him out of the way. The second person that broke in happened to be the 18-year-old's cousin, a young lady that was coming down the stairs to find out what happened. He shot her, pop, in the waist. She fell down the stairs, pop, 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 and killed her, went over to her. She was still wheezing and kind of laughing. He took a spare gun, put it there, pop, put her out of her misery. Could gun laws have stopped that? Was that excessive violence?
Ooh. Yeah, well, I think that's an overkill.
Yeah,
that's what I call
that's
that.
excessive.
You know, I think there is a limit to what you should be able to do.
But they broke into my house, like you said.
Yeah.
I understand. Now, they broken into your house. Now, let me ask you this. First of all, the life could have been spared, a lesson could have been learned by the ones that did it so that and when you're talking 17 and 18 years old, you know, I know you're not going to ID card them, you know, somebody coming in the window, hey, let me see how old you are.
Before I start blasting.
Before I start shooting. But however, you could incapacitate them. You can fire on them to the point where, you know, just stop them from being able to do anything else harmful.
He
to
did
you.
that.
Yeah.
Right. But now when you go back over to them and now you've actually lost control. See, to me, there's a crime committed by the one that broke into your home. And you could even kill a person. But when you go overboard, that's the part which, to me, kind of puts you in the same category as them.
So that was
Something's wrong with
unnecessary
you.
violence.
Could
That's
anything have
unnecessary
prevented that?
violence.
What could have prevented that? Other than them not breaking into his house. If they didn't break into his house.
What could have prevented what?
Him from the overkill. I mean, this was a ex-security officer of some sort. He's 64 years old. He's been around the block. He knows the rules and the regulations when it comes to using weapons.
You just said a key word. See, that's important right there because he knows the rules. As an ex-security officer, he would have known that all I have to do is shoot him in the waist. He's down. And then with the other one, he should have been trained not to kill.
But he's 64. They done broke into my house before.
You know, we could probably go an hour and a half on this same topic because the way you view it and the way others view it, you're going to have some differentiation.
Mm-hmm.
You know, but I would still say that, you know, for example, you can have a gun in your home for protection. However, you could only have this amount of ammunition in one spot with that weapon. Why? Because it may prevent
Overkill.
Right. How you conduct yourself. Are you going to keep shooting and keep shooting and keep shooting? Now, even in that instance, what if 10 people break in your home? You're only allowed to keep 8 rounds. Then, unless you line them all up and
say
start
stand
firing.
still.
And see, the thing about it too, the older you get, the more comfortable I am in my home, and I'm not 30 years old like I used to be. I can't protect myself physically, so I'm a little more fearful now. And if I'm home by myself and these young guys break in my house,
I got to do what I got to do.
Yeah.
But you know what we have to do now? Take a break, take a pause for the cause, pay attention to our sponsors, listen to what we're doing, give us some feedback. We're going to come back and talk about this unnecessary violence, and you're listening and watching The Grapevine. We are back with The Grapevine. Education meeting entertainment, combining both, creating the best in edutainment. Hopefully we're educating you. Hopefully we're making you open up your mind and think a little bit. We want you to share your ideas with us. Please provide feedback. Let us know what you think. Today we've been talking about unnecessary violence, not just gun violence. There's all sorts of violence out there. Guns, knives, pushing people in front of trains like in New York a couple of weeks ago, attacking somebody with your dog. There's all sorts of violence out there. And off camera, you had a very relatable story, and you wanted to share that with us?
Now, which story are we relating? Are we talking about the guy with the gun I was telling you about, or the story about the guy that I paralyzed?
Well, seems like the story about the man that you paralyzed is a little bit more intriguing. So please share.
Unnecessary
as
violence.
I shared, unnecessary violence. As I shared, I was raised in Brooklyn, New York with my brother. And of course, my brother bought me a bicycle. We used to keep the bicycle in the hallway. And when my brother would come home from work, he'd see that the bicycle is gone now. Where's the bicycle, he asked me. And I said, well, the guy, once somebody took the bicycle from me. You gonna go get that bicycle at whatever expense. So, I knew who took the bicycle from me, but they was a lot bigger than I was, and of course they traveled in packs, And that time, they call them gangs. That's one of the fancy terms for it. At any rate, we was playing in the park, and this is in Brooklyn, New York, man, in Kingsborough Project. And there were two condemned buildings, and it had a little breezeway that came between there, and off the other side was a street called Kane. That's where off the backside where my aunt lived. So anyway, I could see those guys coming down through there on that bicycle. And I get that Louisville Slugger because we're playing baseball in the park. And I could see him come down through there, and I got on this wall that was, ran right parallel with the breezeway. And as he come down through there, man, I took that bat, and I started wailing in on this guy. And I made reference to that because we was talking about the guy that did the shooting, the continuous shooting.
Was it too much?
So, was it too much? I can kind of relate because the adrenaline was pumping so much inside me, man, that it just felt like I couldn't stop hitting this guy. And this guy was paralyzed from the waist down. Yeah. So sometimes, when we're caught up in the heat of the moment, it's kind of easy for us to sit back in as comfortable chairs, with nothing really happening to us,
and make it
to be able to say, this is the way it should happen.
Yeah, I respond.
But at the same time, when you're in the heat of the moment, decisions have to be made right then. And sometimes the adrenaline that's pumping in your veins play a vital part in what your actions are to what's going on. And in some cases, like this guy or like myself, at one point in time, we are the ones that's being abused because of the ones that's breaking in.
That's how it started.
But when you really look at it, the end result winds up being that the one that initiated the abusing was the ones that's being abused. It sounds kind of ironic.
Is it justifiable abuse?
I don't think so, because I believe there's a certain point to which you shouldn't go beyond. If you got this person or person's incapacitated to the point where they're no more harm to you, then that's where it should stop at. And then you should let the authorities do their part.
I agree with that, but sometimes when the adrenaline is flowing, you don't know when enough is enough because there's that fear factor.
Right.
Because when I'm afraid, you've invaded my personal, my space. You mess with my mind, and I don't know what you're gonna do next.
Right.
You've already scared me, and if I'm just hitting or if I'm just shooting, and you've already scared me to that point, I'm just gonna keep going like you did. You kept hitting the guy, and you didn't know he was paralyzed.
I didn't know. Sometimes, man, I tell you, man, it's a spontaneous reaction.
In Texas, I believe it was this past summer, there was a gentleman attempting, I can't say gentleman, he was attempting to harm a young child, a female child.
Yes.
And the child's father saw what was going on, ran around to where the action was, and started
Oh, I remember that, yeah.
punching the guy, and his adrenaline got so intense that he just kept punching. And by the time he stopped, the guy was dead.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But here's the thing, too. That was horrific because the guy, he knew the guy. I remember this story. But the guy was raping his 8-year-old daughter.
But is it still excessive? Should I have gotten him off of him, gotten my daughter out of the way, and called the police? Isn't that what the police would have wanted to have happen?
Yeah.
He didn't go to jail. They threw it out of court.
Wasn't it excessive?
It was excessive what he was doing.
Excessive, but understood, I think is a term that probably appropriately fits. Yes, it was excessive. He probably didn't have to go that far. But the circumstances that surround the actions of the father is what merits the actions of the father.
So are we differentiating between the level of excessive violence? Is that what we're doing? It's okay here, but it's not okay here? Is that?
You're making this difficult, first of all. I'm just...
It's some kind of, it's like as a gang member, we're both in jail, but if I tell you something, my word is bond, but I'm in jail and you're in jail, but my word is bond. But there's different, and it's just like if you go to jail for rape, then
Unnecessary violence.
exactly. The inmates are going to come at you a little more than you. You could go in as a murderer. You'll be like, cool. But if you go in, so there are different levels of people tag it, if you want to call it that. So I would say, yes, I'm just thinking of how I would feel if that was my baby.
Oh, I'm not. Oh, by all means, if that was a child of mine, I don't know if I could call the cops and stop like he did. Because at least he did stop and call the cops.
Yeah,
I don't think I could call the cops. I think I would still be beaten until this day, until my hand went through their head.
It kind of reminds me of that movie with Samuel L. Jackson and his daughter. No, it wasn't. No. I forget the name of it.
With Matthew McConaughey.
What was that movie?
Yeah, I shot him, and I hope he...
Where the guy painted the picture for him.
And then said...
Exactly.
And then at the end, he said, okay, let's picture this right here. And then when he finishes, because the jewelry and everything was all Caucasian,
yes.
And he was, of course, African-American, if you would. And once the lawyer explained the scenario and painted the picture, he said, close your eyes and let me paint this picture. And he says, okay, you got this girl going down the street, and then all of a sudden she's attacked by, however many numbers, and she was sexually assaulted and then killed and so forth and so on. He said, now, while you in between that thought, just picture the little girl being white.
Yeah, I remember that. Can't remember the name of the movie.
And that within itself is what overturned the court's decision and freed him from all of the...
From the excessive violence tag.
But he killed the guy.
Yeah, let me ask you this, though. That guy that had your daughter over there, What if you knew that something was wrong with him? What if you knew that,
He wouldn't have to worry about anything else being wrong with him. And on that note, I hate to cut it short. We can come back to it, but we have to pay a few more bills, check out our sponsors, and come back. We'll be right back with the Grapevine. All right, we are back with the Grapevine. We've been talking about excessive violence, and this is part of edutaining our audience. Sometimes the edutainment isn't always humorous, isn't always funny. Sometimes it has to be a little bit real, a little more heartfelt, to be both educational, to make you think, and to be entertaining, to keep you glued. We've been talking about excessive, unnecessary violence, and we could talk about unnecessary violence all over the world. We could talk about it in this country. We could talk about it being in this country and going other places in the world, like Jim Jones and the Guyana tragedy. You have Chuck Manson and his people killing all the Tate LaBianca murders and all that. So, Son of Sam. I mean, you have all these different types of actions going on. And not all of it's including guns, so we didn't want to say gun violence. My thought on the reasoning, and tell me what you think about this. The violence is a byproduct of the United States being the country that we are. We are a country that has very few limitations. You are free to do what you want. You are free to play basketball for a living. You're free to be a doctor. You're free to live on the streets and collect money panhandling. You're free to own weapons under certain circumstances. You're free to own knives and parts of bomb pieces like the gunpowder, like bolts, like pipes, if you're in the right profession. So, based on the freedom that we have as a country, and the inability to know whether somebody's going to be violent or not, are we just receiving part of what happens by being a free society, allowing you to go out without a record and purchase any weapon that you want, not knowing what you're going to do with it? I could buy a machete, which is used in farming. You're from South Carolina, you know sugar cane and machetes go hand in hand. But just because I buy a machete doesn't mean that I'm going to use it in the right way. But because this is America, because they have the freedom to walk into the store and get one, is that a byproduct of our society being a free society from 1777?
You want to tackle that one first?
You know, you could call it byproduct, you can call it whatever you want to. Within every inch of the law, there's probably loopholes. There's loopholes. So I would say if a person wanted to acquire a weapon, whether it's a machete, whether or not it's a gun, whether or not it's whatever, a bomb or whatever, they have the means to do it. The question is now, will they be as responsible as they should be with whatever it is that they obtain? That's the big question. You know, and they're going to do, man, there's people that's going to do all kinds. I don't care what kind of law you have. It's one of those things, there's no good without a bad.
There you go. Good, free country.
Yeah.
Bad.
You have one man as happy. What's the other man? He's sad.
Yep. So
it's going to be a pro and con to every situation.
And when you're growing up, if you make a mistake or if you make a poor decision, use bad judgment and do something, as a kid, daddy spank you and give you a good spanking, you're going to think about what you did to provoke him to do that. you're going to think about, there's consequences, and more than likely you won't do that a second time. In America, I know that if I commit a crime or if I do some unnecessary violence, if I go to jail, I'm just in jail for a night. Oh, it's not as bad as I thought. So I'm going back out now, because if I go back in, I'm comfortable. So if you don't apply pressure to me, I feel like I can go and if I can go and watch TV, if I can go and I can have my lady come and whatever. I don't think the punishment is harsh enough when there's a crime, and so you're more likely to commit it, and you don't worry about the consequences. So to speak.
However, if I don't have any reason for you to believe that I'm going to do that, then you don't have a reason to think that I'm going to do something crazy. If I don't exhibit any behavior before, if I've lived 25 years, clean slate, went to school, average student, got out of school, worked at McDonald's, average worker, not anybody that's, great in social circles, and I get tired of the people picking on me because I'm the fat guy, I'm the slow guy, I'm the guy that can't afford to get his hair cut, so my hair doesn't look good. And I'm 25, so I can purchase a weapon.
So you snap.
Just because they're wrong, it wouldn't make you right.
Oh, I know that.
And these situations are going to happen whether you like it or not. Why? Because we're equally different in many aspects. You might think the right way to handle is like this. I think the right way to handle it is like that.
But when you have the freedom to handle it your way, all sorts of doors are open.
That's right.
You're right.
I have another
You're
question.
Right. You're right.
Another question is the amount of casualties a good tool, a good measuring stick for the tragicness of the incident? In Connecticut, there were 22 children killed. Is that more tragic than 6 deaths over 3 weeks in Chicago?
Of course it's more tragic. It's more tragic because, any life that's lost is a tragedy. Is a tragedy.
But we don't hear about what happens inner city Chicago.
Yeah.
Depends. Depends on how in touch you are with the sources.
And how many?
With Chicago.
Right. Now, if you have relatives in Chicago that you talk to on a day-to-day basis and you talk about any and everything when you guys, get on the phone, on email, Facebook, or whatever, they're probably going to bring it up. Say, did you hear about this here? Of course, you didn't hear it because you weren't there, but they're going to talk to you as though they did because they're living in the now.
What if you don't have that connection? Like, I don't have a connection to Connecticut, but I guarantee you when I go home and turn on that TV, they're still going to be talking about that. But in my community, there are kids that are getting killed on a regular, but that's not making the news because it's not a mass and it's not in a higher economical society, or it's not in a majority this populous, white, Asian, rich, whatever it is. If it's not something on the grand scale, is it more kept under the rug nationally?
Well, I think if it had been in Chicago and if it was in an African American community, I think if it would have been that same age group, I think that would have been televised just as much. But do you blame society sometimes because the guy they said has some sort of disease like relative to autism?
There are plenty of autistic individuals who have not picked up a gun, went into places, and shot it up. And you know what? We can talk about this and talk about this and talk about this. I don't know what the decision is other than continuing conversation. Talk about it with your family. Talk about it at the places you congregate. Talk about it so people will start having that conversation. And maybe if somebody has a problem, they'll be willing to go to seek help before they do something tragic. And that's the key. Try to get to the source beforehand. Does that happen? Can that happen? I don't know. But you know what, guys? I know we've had another great show. We've missed Martius. Martius, you're going to be here next week, baby. So listen to us. Tell us what you think. Tell us what you believe the solution to unnecessary violence is. Let us know through Facebook. But no matter what, our opinions are 100% opinions coming from us. There are no cue cards. You hear it directly from the source, and you will definitely hear it through the grapevine.